Podcast. I'm your host, Jorge Flores, and I hope the beginning didn't cut off a little bit. But on that note, welcome back to another episode of the Nomads Podcast. I'm going to repeat myself because I find it funny. You can reach out to me on Instagram at adept_apron. You can reach out to the Twitter podcast, no_mods009. Uh, Welcome back to another wonderful Monday. Glad you guys made it back. Hope you guys had a good week. I don't know. I was gonna try to be funny, but it's starting to slip my mind. Again, uh, don't be afraid to subscribe to the. Oh my God, why am I flubbing so hard? I'm barely waking up. Really got my coffee. Give me a second. Give me. Here's some audio texture. Ay, cabrón. Was that? No, okay, we're good. We've passed the threshold. You guys seen? Oh, don't be afraid to comment and subscribe to the channel. I am putting this video podcast up on YouTube, or you can listen to the audio podcast on Spotify or Apple Podcast. So maybe I should learn to have a consistent intro, but do enjoy having my way with it. And that's a really bad way to putting it, but I do enjoy. It's not a freestyle. It would be more of a like a. It's not avant-garde. I'm not that crazy. What's the word I'm looking for? Um, it's not freestyle. It's the fucking. ¿Cómo se dice la? Creative. I'll get back to you guys on that one. But hope you guys had a great last week. Hope you guys are ready for another good week. We gotta start off on the right foot. And that was probably really loud, and that was a really bad idea. But it is what it is. Man, I'm not really sure what to touch base on, other than I forgot what I said what I was making last week. I know I mentioned the cookies, but so what happened was sometimes you go shopping and you see a good sale on certain stuff, and then you don't see the expiration date on it. So when you get the bag of nuts, and then you get home, and like 2 days later the bag's all inflated, you're like, ooh, are they still edible? In my opinion, if anything is sealed and there's any type of like swelling in the bag, I don't think it's any good, dog. I mean, the exception would be if you live close to the beach and then you decide to drive like up mountains. Wait, no, or is it the other way around? Whenever there's elevation in play, usually there's some type of like swelling, right? Yeah, it would swell going up, right? Yeah, in theory. I don't know, hopefully. I don't know. Well, as you can tell, this isn't a science podcast. This is me explaining to you again that the whole point of the No Mods podcast is to enjoy ourselves. Like if we were two cooks cooking it up, you got a 5 minute break, smoking a cigarette. I don't smoke, but you do. I don't know, but and we're just fucking chatting, bro. We're just shit. We're just throwing shit at the wall, you know. Like what's really grinding our gears, bro? Huh? What's grinding your gears, huh? What, those TikTok recipes aren't working out for you? No shit. I mean, which is on that note a point that I wanted to address. Or address is a very strong word, but I'm gonna stick with it. But it is kind of what I'm gonna pivot towards today, mostly due to the fact I don't think. Hold on, dude. Something's up. Like probably just dehydrated. I don't know if you guys get this thing where the back of your tongue swells up, and it's not an allergic reaction, but like it just makes it harder to talk. Like, oh, that's audio texture right there. Huh? Fuck. Um, but I'm just okay. Gotta talk slow and enunciate. All right, relájate. All right, let's talk about recipes. Right. One, hi. Two, hi again. Three, you are more than welcome to make your own recipe. You don't have to stick to any recipe in the book. That being said, if you see a TikTok recipe you like and you're like something's missing, just fucking add it because that's the only way you're gonna find out if you're gonna enjoy it or not. Because I am repeating myself from a previous episode, but I did touch on that, and now I wanted to elaborate a little bit more. Mostly due to the fact that sometimes recipes are complete dog doo doo. And I'm not sure how much I can curse due to YouTube guidelines because I've read them a while ago and it's been, oh shit, it's been a few months since I've been recording, huh? Let's see. Oh shit, it's been since like November, huh? Huh. Damn, dog. I need to look back. I need to look back. Okay, my bad. That was a good tangent. Thank you for sticking with me for these past 6 months, maybe 5 months. And I enjoy your guys' support. So don't forget to subscribe, like, and listen to the audio podcast. And I would like it more if we shared some recipes. Which, another point that I want to make, the best way to know if a recipe works is if someone hands it to you. In the sense that, like, there's a bit of a keyword would be communication behind it, right? Like, the recipes you see passed around the most would be usually baking ones. Like, my mom recently made sweet empanadas, and the recipe she used I thought was fucking weird, but it makes sense that if you don't have yeast, use beer. And they came out pretty good. I'm not sure of the beer because I don't think there's enough yeast in beer for that shit to happen. But I'm assuming it has to do with that the fact that it's carbonated that gives it a bit of aeration and lightness to it. Because I'm still figuring how that would work out. But um, that being said, your best source of a good recipes for people that enjoy cooking and experiment with recipes, especially the fact when they're trying to make their own, simply due to the fact that an easy example, just so I can lean a little bit farther away towards Mexican food, would be a pesto. Because, as far as I know, some people like it spicy or zesty, however you want to explain it, with a bunch of garlic, which, in my, I mean, I get it, you know? Because at the end of the day, you're still going to hit it in the pan. Like, you're still going to give it, like, some, like, a quick fry. Because I do find that, um, I forgot the word already. That pesto is sort of kind of like a sofrito, but I mean, used necessarily different profiles. So don't. It's not a good comparison. But like the way it's used in my head is how it makes sense. Um, but that being said, everyone. I'm pretty sure everyone has their own way of making the pesto. They probably use different tools. Some people might do it by hand, which is fucking crazy because they're using the media luna. If I'm saying that right, which is you guys might have seen if you've walked into one of those weird they're not weird, but like the sur le table or sur le table and Williams Sonoma, and they have the two bladed thing with like a handle. We go like it looks like a half moon or like a crescent moon, and I mean I haven't seen it, but supposedly that's the way to do it. You can use a food processor or a blender, but the key thing is the steps you do your recipe in, because like simple fact, if you work garlic too hard, you like masticate it, if that's the right word, and it becomes very like acided. I'm not sure if acrid is the right word, but it sounds right. I'm gonna write that down, so I need to look it up. Um, and then it's very like a very strong flavor, right? And so, in my perspective, I would do everything else but the garlic, and then mince the garlic myself. Um, and there's a good technique my friend passed down to me, which if you're trying to get a really like, if you're trying to make like a garlic paste, to mince it as fine as you can, and then you're gonna want to add salt. The coarser the better, and essentially from there you're gonna like scrape it, and you're gonna like roll it into it, and essentially what you're doing is the salt's adding like coarseness to it, so it's gonna like slowly like break down the garlic granules even finer, and then you can add that. The difference being is you're it's hard to explain it, but like your hands are more gentle than the food processor or blender. If that helps you imagine what I'm trying to say or understand. Um, but that would be small details, and I know a lot of people are interested in making their own pesto. So, my suggestion would be mostly follow through with that. I think the garlic is part of the recipe, but you don't want it to overpower it. And if you do, I think you would appreciate doing the technique that I mentioned by adding the salt and like running your knife like along it. Like if this is the garlic right here, you're gonna like scrape, and I don't know if that makes sense or if the visual even helped. But essentially, I'm just like pressing down and pulling, and you're scraping along the board, and you're scraping and pulling, and yeah. And then if you wanted to not add any garlic or cheese, depending if you're vegetarian, you can always make a pesto, which essentially is the same thing but without pine nuts and actually I need to look that up because I remember looking into it once and it not being what I was told. But essentially, a pesto is kind of like herb blend with oils, or usually like olive oil, and it's essentially like similar to a pesto, but it doesn't have the pine nuts or the cheese or the garlic, right? But I need to look that up real quick because now I'm like, I just caught myself in a thing. Hold on. But on that note, I hope you guys enjoyed that funny thing that I did last week where I was trying to talk over the dogs. Cold sauce. Oh, garlic, basil, oil. So it does have garlic. So I just learned something new. I guess the one that I was making essentially was for the people. So the restaurant that I worked at essentially was making recipes in order for the people that have those dietary restrictions in regards to onion and garlic. So if you eliminate the garlic from the pesto, then you still have a como se dice you can still work with the food item, right? Like you don't have to change the menu too hard. Um, and that's something on a professional level. Like it's up to you. Um, but then again, if you're ever cooking for somebody new, always ask about if they have any allergies or if they have any preference in taste, because you never know. Because how do I say it? It's hard to tell what people are into now. Like I'm not saying people are picky, but like how do you say it? They're not. I think they're just more aware, or they've seen something that's kind of spooked them. And I think being scared of food has become more prominent nowadays. Just because one, there's the whole GMO scare, which personally, a vegetable is a vegetable. Like as long as it's giving me the nutrients that I need. Um, but the other fact is that oh, give me a second. Is that there's people that take it to extremes, and or they can see like quote unquote gluten free being an extreme, but it does have to do with the fact that like people take it to an extreme, right? Because I've known a lot of people go gluten free because they see it as a diet, and I'm not saying that's an extreme, but like I get it's a personal choice. But for people that don't understand that it's a personal choice, they see it as an extreme. If that makes any sense or correlation. But a quick sip of coffee, real quick. All right, and then because I started deviating a little bit too much on the pesto. I wanted to touch more. Going back to the recipes, right? Like, what would be some good sources for you for or other good sources I would recommend you guys? Usually I would trust books a little bit more. But that being said, try to stay away from celebrity chefs unless they have a decent amount of accolades in the industry, right? Like, the rest the so for in culinary school you stick to traditional recipes. So I do have Chef Robuchon's French cuisine book, which is kind of it's kind of I can't remember the title off the top of my head, but it's essentially like a lot of basics or simple like essential like French cuisine dishes, and I've made a couple and they're pretty good. Um, is it good due to the recipe or because of me? Who knows? Um, but I think your level of experience does matter how good the recipe comes out. Um, that being said, if that book is too high for you or too high of a like skill level, Then there are other books that I would recommend, like, oh man, I wanted to buy his book, but oh man, I can't believe I forgot to do. When I see it, I always recognize it. But a lot of the Asian chefs have really good recipes in regards to like Asian street food. Those are always good. Like the recipes to me make a lot of sense, and like they don't deviate from what I learned in culinary school. Um, what else is there? Um, for Indian food, I'm not too sure. Um, I kind of just ask my friend for recipes, and she gives me pretty good ones, even though they're not in English sometimes. Um, but then for Mexican food, that one gets a little bit more tricky due to the simple fact that there's a lot of, um, like especially when summer comes around, like I think the term Mexican food kind of gets tossed away, and it's more like let's get cooking, and that's slowly been happening more and more aggressively. Which I'm not trying to defend like people doing that or vice versa, but I'm just saying like it's happening. Just be aware that there's gonna be some recipes you see out there that are probably kind of weird. Um, but I'm trying to think who would be good on that. Like I mean, I think his name's Aaron Sanchez is pretty decent. But like the issue with some of these celebrity chefs is that they're trying to just make sales, right? So there's not their recipes are solid, but they're not like there's probably some more skill involved than they're implying, right? Um, cause and that's another thing, right? Like you should know the skill level required for certain food, like Asian street food. Like if you don't know how to fry food, then that's probably one of the things you should learn before like committing. Cause there are, cause I was looking at the fried foods, I'm like, oh shit, like this is pretty legit. But if you don't know how to fry foods, or even know like a simple dredging method, then like you might want to like try something easier, more in the lines of like stay away from Food Network, but stay more towards like I've seen some pretty. They're kind of funny, but the 30-minute meals are pretty. I was, I would say those 30-minute cookbooks, 30-minute meal cookbooks are probably a good stepping stone to see where your skill level's at. Because if you're finding it too easy or not, or if you find yourself not organized enough to like make the recipe within 30 minutes, then I think that would help you gauge where you're at. And then but yeah, and then I know I sidestepped away from the whole Mexican thing, but I wanted to say a good beginner Mexican food book for those interested would be the. I'm pretty sure his name is Rick Bayless, which at first I thought it was kind of weird, but then I started. If you look into the guy's like full like career, he spent a lot of time in Mexico, which gives him more credibility towards his recipe. But on top of that, the recipes don't deviate that hard from what I've learned, right, or seen. Um, and on top of that, I think for the Mexican cook, the authentic Mexican cookbook that he has, I think it deviates slightly just in the fact that he's trying to make it more accessible to people that aren't necessarily around Mexican food, because he does come from a town that's didn't have any Mexican food, but when he was finally had it in his life, he was very inspired, and that's what drove him. That's what drove him towards Mexican food. So and and then I'm trying to think what like non like vegetarian cookbooks there might be, and that's when it gets tricky because a lot of the cuisines that I mentioned do have a lot of vegetarian dishes, but it gets kind of like muddled just due to the fact that people seek protein, right? So, but if you want to like vegetarian meals, I think I would probably go more like Mediterranean cookbooks. Um, I don't know. I'm not too sure because I mean, like a falafel is like for me, falafel is like god tier vegetarian, and then I would follow that with like put like root vegetable mole, and then like a simple like veggie stir fry would like follow that. Um, but that's personal. I don't know why I said that with such vindication, but anyway, but I still got a lot of time. I'm not too worried. Um, so as far as cookbooks, I would just look at the credibility, And and then so my next suggestion goes into like how much research you should put into it. And for me, I count if I find three recipes with similar ingredients and similar instructions, and are from different sources, which is a keyword because I think that's where you want to see like the Venn diagram, like of similarities, right? Um, the more similarities, the better, in my opinion, because then it'll guide you towards the right step. And once you commit to that recipe, and then you work on it, then that's how you know. Then that would be your recipe once you start working on it, right? So on and so forth. Um, um, but then if you don't have or if you don't want to buy a book because they are pretty expensive because they are like 25 and up, unless they're on sale. But like finding cookbooks on sale is pretty rare unless you go to the a thrift store. Um, what was I gonna say? Oh, I would just I would suggest you avoid certain websites like Serious Eats, Taste of Home, Delish, All Recipes. Mostly because one, they are the top item that pops up on Google, which I don't mind. Like I think if you're trying to like, how do you say it? I'm trying to explain this correctly, right? Oh, you know what? Those four websites are perfect to gauge your level as well. Because I've noticed some of those recipes give you exact quantities. They give you pretty decent instructions. And then I forget which one gives you the option like, oh, you can find these at these store or at this store. So like, respectively, they are decent sources for those of you who are trying to learn how to cook. Um, but don't lean on them too hard. They are a good crutch. They are a good like they're good training wheels. But the key word in the kitchen would be organization, cleanliness, and execution, right? Um, cause how do you say it? Like I think those websites kind of focus more towards like they're kind of like it's a Facebook thing in my opinion, or that's how I'm like viewing it. And the same thing would go for like TikTok recipes. Like they're just there for like a wow factor, right? The ones, and I'm not gonna deviate too hard, right? So on that note, usually I've gotten most of my recipes either from websites that aren't in English, um, and then I try to figure out how to translate it if I don't understand it. And I do that because I think most of those recipes tend to be more in line. Like my Bavarian potato salad was in German, and I had to translate that one. And well, I think it's pretty hard to fuck that one up, but like it was fucking good. I'm gonna make that soon with this if the heat wave continues. Pero usually the blogs are pretty good. I don't mind those, but just be careful with the blogs because I've noticed I'm not sure if they're doing it on purpose, but they're you can find a handful of blogs that you can literally tell they copy and paste. So I would just stay out of those. Which I think it personally I think is something you should be like paying attention to. If you realize like there's exact wording from different websites, I would stay away from it. And then the funny thing is you can tell when some of these like wannabe blogs literally copy and paste uh from a credible like source. Like I'm not saying I use Food and Wine too much, but like that is a decent online source in my opinion. The only catch about that one is it's kind of like some recipes are super solid, but then you can tell some of them are mainly there to like gain traction with like Google search and stuff. But like I said, like if you can find, sorry about that, multiple sources that like follow up on what you're looking at, or like that support the recipe that you like, then by all means go for it. And and on that note, uh, for this week, I don't know if you guys made your omelet right, but I hope you guys did. I should have made mine. I'll make mine right now. I'll post it. Deal. Shake on it. Okay, chill. Um, I want to taste. um, oh, on that note, for this week, how about you guys try making your own recipe or finding your own recipe and trying it out? and it could be a very simple recipe. If you want to make your own pico de gallo, by all means. If you want to make your own pesto, go for it. If you want to make a pesto, even better. Um, but moral of the story is, find a recipe, adjust it as needed, or you can just follow through with the recipe, as simple as it may be. Um, like, uh, like I'm not saying make enchiladas, but like I know there's different types of enchiladas, and they're both very. If you make enchiladas, all I'm gonna ask you is just make your own salsa. That's all I'm gonna ask. Because I know there's the oven ones, which I forget where they're from, but I know it's a thing because it is flour tortillas, so it's gonna be in northern Mexico. Or you can make the crispy ones where you like dip it in the chili oil, then fry it, then roll it, which is how I prefer them. Um, but going back to it, just make your own recipe, share your recipe, um, and send the link. Uh, you can add the podcast on Twitter. You can add you can add me on Instagram. Um, on that note, I hope you guys have a great rest of your week. Thank you for listening to the Nomads podcast. I'm going to be here every Monday. I'm your host, Jorge Flores. You can reach out to the me. Oh my god, trying to say that on my breath is hard, rough. Okay, ready? I'm your host, Jorge Flores. You can reach out to the podcast on Twitter at NO_MODS009. You can reach out to me on Instagram at adept_apron. You can also listen to this video podcast on Spotify or Apple Podcasts under No Mods Podcast. And I appreciate you guys' continuing support. Don't be afraid to subscribe to the podcast. Leave a comment, like, save it, download it, do whatever you need to do. Thank you for listening this week, and I hope to hope to see you guys next week.